Okay, let's talk about process groups. We mentioned that before, and we'll start with the very first one. This is the initiating one. This is a process group that includes processes that defines and then authorizes the project. Key outputs in this project phase are project charter and project scope documents. This basically starts the whole project off. You have another one called planning. Planning process group defines objectives and plans to achieve the project. The project management plan in the 4th edition of the PMBOK guide, or in earlier versions of the PMBOK guide, they called this the project plan, is basically the key output. Then you've got the executing process group. This is where you integrate people and resources to carry out the plans we've just discussed. This is where all the work's done. Then you've got monitoring and controlling, which I hate writing all that out, so I tend to abbreviate it and call it M&C. In order to meet project objectives, this set of processes measure and monitor project progress. Most of the processes here are centered on quality and change management. And of course, finally, we have the closing. This is where you've got a big party once you ship the product, and this is where the project is completed, the product or services is accepted or should be accepted by the customer. Although this looks a little waterfallish, as you can see. Step 1, step 2, step 3 just goes in some sort of sequence. Many times process groups don't exactly work that way. In fact, they tend to overlap. And in the case of Agile, there is the concept that's a little bit different. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in the background, and I'm going to show you something that was made popular by Deming. It's called Plan, Do, Study, Act, otherwise known as PDSA. And this is basically the approach that PDSA takes is that once you get a project started, you go through a series of learn and doing, which includes planning the next step, doing the work, studying the results, and then acting upon that. The perspective is here with continuous improvement is that you're basically cycling. Probably a crazy way to show this one is just basically show this rotating, where you're basically doing these PDSA iterations throughout the project till you actually get done. I'm getting dizzy. And what if we combine these two approaches? Take the process groups that we showed before, and we'll rearrange just slightly, where you start a project with the initiating process group, and then go to planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and then we'll put the plan, do, study, act cycle in the middle. You could be really smart in terms of managing your project in a more agile way by putting out of the PDSA cycle, you put the plan part in the planning process group, the do part in the executing, and then the study and act in the monitoring and controlling. And this can show you how you can adapt more agile techniques in the standard PMI PMBOK guide set of process groups. Now let's talk about knowledge areas just for a second. Here's an example of one. This is how I like showing each of the knowledge areas, and in fact, this knowledge area is officially called the Project Integration Management Knowledge Area, and I just like to call it the Integration Management Knowledge Area, or KA, like we discussed before. This knowledge area has 6 well-defined processes, and as you can see them, this is the Develop Project Charter, Develop Project Management Plan as part of a planning process group. On the execution side, there's one process called Direct and Manage Project Execution. And then monitoring controlling, there's actually 2 processes, as you can see right here. And then finally, when you close the project, there's the close project or project phase process. In this knowledge area, all 6 processes reinforces what to do to basically define and coordinate the operation of the overall project. Now, this isn't the only knowledge area there is. There's several others. And why don't we do this? They all look very similar to this table, and we're just going to put this in the background. And you'll notice each of the tutorials in our PM Chalkboard website uses 2-letter like acronyms. And I chose them. It's not official. In terms of knowledge areas, we have several. The first that you're familiar with is the project integration knowledge area. I'll call that IM. Then we have the project scope management, and I'll call that SC. This is the set of processes that gives you tips and techniques to manage scope. You've got the time, which I'll call TN, and the time are all those processes that are involved with schedule management. You've got the cost, we'll call that CS, and the cost is the budget. You've got quality, to call that QA, which is the quality control, quality management that's vital to the success of the acceptance of a project with your stakeholders, and particularly your customers. Then you've got that soft skills, which is the HR, human resources knowledge area. And you've got a great one here that we really do spend considerable time in our tutorials on, which is the communication, which a lot of us aren't really good at that. And we try to give you perspective on how to make that more effective. I'll call that the CM for communications. Then you've got the risk management. This is mitigating the negative issues and in some cases taking advantage of positive things that can impact your project, and we'll call that the risk, which is RK. And then finally procurement, which is typically third party, working with contracts, outsourcing, things like that, and that we'll call PC. So now you know.